Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, schools are suing the state again and again. It's over education funding. Also tonight, we'll hear how Arizona is faring in terms of global trade. And a local architect who studied under Frank Lloyd Wright talks about his new book on design and the greater community. That's next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Arizona school districts today announced a lawsuit against the state for failing to provide adequate capital budget funding, which goes to things like buses, building maintenance, books, and technology. Here to talk about the suit is the attorney representing the plaintiffs, Tim Hogan of the Arizona Center for Law and the Public Interest, and Mike Berrigan, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Auxiliary Services for one of the plaintiffs, the Glendale Elementary School District. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining us.
Good being here.
Tim, why this lawsuit? Why now?
Well, because we're starting to move into a crisis mode here with public schools. The state had in place since 1998 a program in response to previous Arizona Supreme Court decisions to provide funding for capital needs of school districts to meet minimum adequacy standards. Over time, the state has reneged on the commitment that it made to the Supreme Court to adequately fund those programs. And in fact, in 2013, repealed the two major funding sources for ongoing capital needs, such that we're back where we were in 1991 when we originally filed a lawsuit alleging the very same thing.
And the court ruled that it was unconstitutional because schools in low-income areas were not on the same playing field as schools in high-income areas.
That's right. The court condemned over-reliance on a property tax system to meet capital needs because you've got, as you point out, school districts with a low property tax base. Takes an enormous tax effort to generate any kind of funding. School districts with an ample property tax base takes a very low tax effort. It's an inequitable system. It's inequitable to the school districts, to the kids, and it's inequitable to taxpayers, an element that we've added to this lawsuit because school districts are now being forced to issue bonds to take care of things the state should be paying for, major repairs and renovations of schools. And so you've got taxpayers paying higher taxes in those school districts than they should because the state should be paying for them.
Talk about your school district and what you're seeing.
So since 2009, the Glendale Elementary School District has been reduced about $32 million. Of that 32, $29 million is very specific to capital funding. Capital funding pays for textbooks, technology. Some of you may recall that earlier in the year we had to close 2 schools because of structural deficiencies. That's a challenge. When $29 million is no longer coming in, districts have challenges and they have needs that aren't going away.
When you talk to lawmakers about these challenges, what do you hear? What do they say?
You know, we've heard different things. For example, someone has said maybe districts should have saved a little bit more. But to give you an example of the cuts, you know, the cut's about 85%. It's a little bit more than that, but we'll go with 85. Let's assume that you're making, you know, $1,000 and you're cut 85%. That $150 is what you're left with to make ends meet, and then to be told, you know, you should have saved a little bit more. It's hard to make ends meet when you're only getting, you know, a fraction of your funding.
Talk about how long you've had to deal with this, and is this a factor now in how do you budget when you're not quite sure what's coming in?
That's a great question. So since 2009, you know, we've been reduced by that $29 million, which it's a huge challenge for school districts, and so districts have to give something up. You know, recently we just adopted our first reading adoption that cost about $2.5 million. The first time in 9 years that we've done a textbook adoption. And so, you know, we want to move academic achievement forward, but how do you do so when there is no money to buy the technology that you need, the textbooks that you need, or the supplemental material to move those kids forward?
We should mention the Constitution talks about a general uniform public school system. That was part of the original suit back in the 90s. Is that part of this suit?
Oh, it very much is. The Supreme Court back in the 90s, through a series of 3 decisions, gave meaning to general and uniform, the general and uniform clause. The legislature is supposed to establish and maintain a general and uniform public school system. And the Supreme Court said the state is supposed to provide the funding to school districts in order for those school districts to have their buildings and facilities meet the minimum adequacy standards. And so there is no state funding anymore. They've repealed it all. If you want funding for capital these days for repairs and renovations, you've either got to go to your taxpayers, if they would allow it, or you've got to dip into your operational budget. And that has impacts on students and teachers and class sizes and everything else.
And that takes you back to the original lawsuit to begin with, the inequities of low and higher income neighborhoods and districts.
In many ways, the situation today is worse than when we filed the first lawsuit in 1991.
How long have you been now at the district?
4 years.
Okay, better, worse, same story? What are you seeing?
Definitely, we're trying to meet all of our needs, and so we've, made some difficult decisions. I think, as Mr. Hogan has pointed out, Glendale in particular has moved money that historically goes into teacher salaries, and we've had to move it over to capital to cover some of those needs. Again, the example that I just recently gave was your textbooks.
Yeah, Tim, I seem to understand the compliance issue. Compliance involved a one-time settlement. It involved certain numbers between $100 and $200 annually for maintenance, $200 a year for soft capital. You're saying that money, are you saying what? They're just simply not complying?
It's gone. Right, they repealed it. They decided in 2013 that they were going to repeal the largest component of that, which is called the building renewal formula, which if in effect today would be providing about $250 million annually to school districts for their buildings and facilities. They just outright repealed it. If school districts want money from the state has appropriated a total of $17 million, up to $32 million, to the School Facilities Board to distribute to school districts around the state, compared to hundreds of millions of dollars in needs out there for schools.
I know the governor's office has said that a lawsuit would create paralysis, as a quote, create paralysis around the issue of dollars for education. Are you concerned? You're a plaintiff here. Are you concerned by bringing this up? We could have a situation similar to inflation funding, which went on for years until we had the Prop 123 settlement.
For far too long, we've haven't fully funded education, and so I think it's time to really advocate for the over 1 million students that attend, who have chosen to attend traditional public schools. And so this is an issue facing education. We need to continue having those discussions, because there's a huge elephant in the room, and that is we're not funding education properly. And so we need to really address the brutal facts of Arizona's school finance system.
The comment as well on the governor's idea that you go ahead and file suit, what you're going to do, and all of a sudden that just locks everything up.
Well, I think we're at paralysis. Given what I've seen of the governor's plan to the legislature this year, I don't know what you would call this situation but paralysis. We're not seeing any significant new education funding coming into the system.
Is there a dollar figure in the suit?
There's not a dollar figure, but you can get some idea about how much is necessary on an annual basis if you look at bond issuances by school districts. So that can vary pretty significantly, but it's anywhere from $300 to $500 million a year. Like I said, they repealed $250 million in funding, and the other bucket of funding for capital was over $50 million. That's over $300 million annually.
Last question, timetable. What's to follow here? What do we look for?
Well, we filed this in Maricopa County Superior Court. Hopefully, since we have a body of Supreme Court decisions that say pretty exactly what the state is supposed to do, we'll be able to get through this relatively quickly. But the first time around, it took 7 years from the time we filed the lawsuit to the time they finally enacted Students First.
And your thoughts, final thoughts on this?
Well, we hope that we can really work together to bring some real solutions to Arizona school finance. That's necessary, and it's not going to go away, and so I think it's time to confront the issue.
Gentlemen, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is Arizona Horizon. Coming up next, how the state is doing in international trade.
When I'm outside and in a beautiful place, I feel like a better, more whole person. I saw the National Park series from Ken Burns on PBS. The series was so passionate and so enthusiastic that it makes you want to experience it. So I decided to go from Florida to Alaska and visit national parks along the way, and I'd only do it by bike. Rocky Mountain National Park, Tetons, Yellowstone, Glacier, Denali. I wouldn't have started an adventure like this if it wasn't for PBS. Listening to the historians and the rangers talk about how the parks were formed and what they mean to America, all of those things make you want to explore them. You want to be down by the river, you want to dip your toe in it, you want to experience it. I really feel like in order to achieve something that it just takes effort, that if you keep at it, you're very likely to succeed. PBS inspired me to live more fully and take the adventure of a lifetime.
Get the inside scoop on what's happening at Arizona PBS. Become an insider. You'll receive weekly updates on the most anticipated upcoming programs and events. Get the insider delivered to your email inbox. Visit azpbs.org to sign up today.
The 2017 International State of the State Luncheon will be held Thursday at the Sheraton Grand in Phoenix. Governor Doug Ducey will speak at the conference, which looks at Arizona's international economic, business, and political engagement. Here for a discussion on those issues is former Arizona Senator Jon Kyl and local attorney James Arrowood. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Senator, we'll start with you. Arizona's position in the world economy. Where are we right now?
We rely a lot on trade. It's not the state that trades, obviously. It is the businesses within the state. And last year, the trade exports and imports together were about $22 billion, north of $22 billion. Over a third of that involves exports to Mexico, and then about $900 million less in imports. I think it's $8.3 billion last year in exports to Mexico and $7.4 billion in imports. Also well over $3 billion in trade with Canada. So trade is a really important part of the Arizona economic situation, and it's going well.
Increasingly so, trade important to Arizona? I mean, we used to have the 5 Cs and the whole 9 yards, but are we becoming more of a trading state?
We have been historically. Last year was a little bit flat, but still, I think compared with other states, we're doing very well.
How do you see it, the state of Arizona in terms of international trade?
Well, I think we're on a positive uptick in particular, and what many people don't realize about the state of Arizona is ASU was recently ranked #1 in the country, so even above Stanford, Harvard, other places for innovation. And that's really where Arizona's trade has potential, is innovation, in particular unmanned vehicles, some of the government technology, but also we know Amazon, Apple, high-tech companies out of California really want to come here, in particular because of the legal issues that they deal with in California and regulatory issues.
They want to come here. Can we get them to bring their headquarters here, though?
Well, I think the governor might be talking a little bit about that on Thursday because our cost of living here is much less than California. We've already seen a big influx of folks, both businesses and individuals, from California. So as long as we keep our tax rates lower, our regulatory climate good, as long as we're a right-to-work state, and our cost of living is stable, we should be very competitive, both with California and other states, including states like Texas, believe it or not.
Interesting. As far as economic engagement, business engagement, political engagement, any of the three, talk to us about Arizona and how we look, how we stand, our profile, those sorts of things.
Well, the governor's going to be talking about that Thursday. I'll just focus on one thing. There's been a lot of concern about the president's announcement that he wants to renegotiate NAFTA. Now, NAFTA is the agreement that enables Canada, Mexico, and United States businesses to trade pretty freely amongst ourselves. And it's been a real big boon to all three countries. Again, we export more to Mexico than we import. The president could decide to renegotiate that and make the formal announcement, which would mean that 90 days thereafter, say in August, we could actually begin renegotiating NAFTA's terms. But my guess is that while there are a few things that folks would like to take a look at, and there are a lot of new technology issues that probably weren't dealt with 30 years ago, by and large, I wouldn't be too concerned if I were an Arizona business that the renegotiation of NAFTA is going to be a big problem. Might even be a help.
And yet, I want to talk about renegotiation ideas, what should be renegotiated, what would make NAFTA better, but you still have a president who's called it one of the worst deals in the history of mankind, or whatever he said there, a little verbose there, but the idea, he was not very happy with this. He seems a little more understanding. Does that help Arizona businesses?
Well, I read a really interesting comment, which is look at what the president does versus what the president says. And I read that very recently, and I think that could apply here. Meaning with NAFTA, there's obviously tremendous benefits to us because we're a border state. But I think with regards to negotiations and things like that, where Arizona is really going to get a boost is in the technology sector. And I think as long as we stay the course on that, which the governor is doing and showing some great leadership there, I think Arizona as a state has potential. Now, we do have what's called the Committee on Foreign Relations here in Arizona, and many people don't realize that. So there are people like myself, and I'm a California transplant, to your point, Senator. I moved out here for the cost of living. Frankly, it's half of what it was in Los Angeles, and it's really a tremendous place. I can do business across the country. So that's one of the reasons I'm here.
If the president calls and says, Senator Kyl, I want you to renegotiate NAFTA, what would you do?
What I would do is see what new technologies or issue may have arisen in the 30 years or so since NAFTA was negotiated and signed. I think the basic program for NAFTA was fine. None of the countries had large tariffs. Mexico didn't have high tariffs, for example. But you know, any agreement that's 30 years old probably has some areas in which there could be some modifications. But I would think that improving it at the margins rather than finding some inherent fault in it would be the appropriate way to approach the negotiations.
And again, the idea of watching what the president does as opposed to what he says. There is uncertainty, though, when you hear some of these words.
But take it easy, calm down. You know, we have a lot of checks and balances in our government that keep everything somewhat in the middle. And the president has said a lot of things in the campaign that aren't being implemented in his presidency. One area to look at, for example, we were talking before about the technology countries. So much comes out of China. Well, China doesn't play by the rules all the time. It violates WTO rules all the time. It's very hard to enforce that. And yet the president needs China to deal with North Korea. So how hard will he really be in leaning on China in the trade sphere? Remains to be seen.
Let's talk Arizona and Asia and the trade sphere. Trans-Pacific Partnership, adios. I mean, impact on Arizona.
You know, I think, as the senator said, rather than be reactive, a good friend likes to use the term stay frosty. And I think that's what we need to do here is just wait and kind of see what actually happens. You know, there's a lot of levers and switches that people want to pull, but you really, and especially in practice, I tell my clients, just sit tight and let's see what actually happens, okay? And obviously with WTO and some of NAFTA, I mean, these are all interrelated concepts, but as the state goes, we're really now becoming a technology state. And that's where I think we have an edge.
Trans-Pacific Partnership, again, I mean, you're not a big fan of that.
Yes, I am.
You are, but so what do you make of us not being involved anymore?
It's very hurtful, and perhaps it's more hurtful in terms of international relations and even national security than it is with regard to trade. One has to think that at the end of the day, we're going to find ways to have either multilateral or bilateral agreements with these countries because they're all so important. We can't not have agreements to trade with these countries. What it did, though, was to create a vacuum, and guess who's very happy to fill the vacuum? China. Now, would you rather have rules of commerce established on American principles, where we have dispute resolution mechanisms, the rule of law, all of the things that we're used to and really enhances trade, or would you have the Chinese model, which is very secretive, very government-oriented, writing the rules of the trade for these countries? I think we'd be much better off with America engaged.
From a distance, it sounds like the Trump administration says, though, it's better for America if we work deals one-on-one with these countries as opposed to a broad partnership. Make any sense to you?
Well, there are two ways to approach it. You do both, and to some extent, the multilateral deals are easier in the long run, but I think it was a mistake, not just from a trade perspective, but as my former colleague John McCain likes to mention, from a national security perspective. It kind of tells the world, we're leaving, go ahead and move in if you want to, China. That's not a good thing.
And we've had discussions on that on the program. Last point here. Now, this address is Thursday, correct? Give us some details on this.
And it's rare that some of the meetings that we have are open to the public, but this one in particular, the public is invited to attend, and the governor will be speaking on some of these issues that are important, not just to Arizona, but to the country, really. When you think about our trade, and one point is, you know, a lot of the commerce comes from California ports, from China, into Arizona to the rest of the country. So there's a lot of relevance here, and certainly any business owners or any business leaders, political leadership, This is the kind of event that they attend, and there will be a number in attendance, including Senator Kyle, who is graciously going to be moderating the event. And we're going to take questions and speak openly about some of these issues. Well, normally stuff that is kind of done in the political and law offices around the state.
All right, Thursday, Sheraton Grand,
That's
downtown
correct.
Phoenix, what time?
Lunch, and that's
Lunch?
11, yeah, 11 o'clock, open
All right,
doors.
you got a winner right there.
Tickets. Phoenix Committee on Foreign Relations.
All right, good to have you both here.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you
joining.
again,
Good to see you
Thanks for
again.
your
You
time.
bet.
Local architect Vernon Swabak, who trained under Frank Lloyd Wright, is out with a new book on how architectural design interrelates with the greater community. The book is titled Designing for the Life of Community at a Time of Great Change. We welcome Vern Swabak to Arizona Horizon. Good to see you again. Thank you for joining us. The focus of this new book, what is it?
It's more urgent than my other books. What the important part of that title is at a urgent change. People really don't realize it because we don't tend to see that far ahead, but we're going to have a whole segment of the population that has absolutely no funding for their retirement. They're going to live another 30 years more than they planned for, and they're coming up flat.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that architecture, in addition to being something that works well with high budgets and people who are very able, should be the kind of the glue that ties together all kinds of elements to make things work on a basis that is entirely dependent on community.
So talk about, define community and define how architecture can move that community forward.
Well, in Arizona, I think we might agree that when we think of development, we think more in terms of that which is bought and sold in piecemeal fashion. We had one developer say it all comes down to velocity and margin, which doesn't really have a human element. Another one said something I like better, which was it all comes down to the art of the possible. But it needs to do more than that. Frank Lloyd Wright called the architect the seeing eye for society. And there's a certain involvement in architecture, in our firm and others, which is kind of an automatic pilot. People that have a dream, they have a program, and they have the budget to make it happen. This book is aimed at people who don't have that. And the solution, the only solution I know of, is a way of organizing the community for doing more with less. You mentioned Taliesin. I lived there for 21 years. We had people of royal blood, we had multimillionaires, we had people with nothing, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two. We had formal black tie evenings and very elegant way of life, and that left within my realm of thinking something for greater application.
Is there a will for that greater application? Can we see that far into the future?
I would say it's a raging blind spot of the future. And so, I only write books about things that I don't think are happening in our normal daily commissions, and they need to happen. In the lead right now is technology, and I have a chapter called Technology's Gifts and Threats.
Yes.
And there are people very prominent in the technology world who say they can't understand why we're more concerned, why we're not more concerned. Because taking on a life of its own, there are predictions that we'll have like many centuries worth of change within a single year coming up. Well, I can say without any concern of being wrong, they're not talking about progress in the human nature of whether we are going to kill each other or love each other or sustain life or not.
So architecture can what? Can bind the community? You mentioned the fact that so many folks are going to be retiring here soon and going off into the later years and simply aren't prepared for that. How does architecture help with that?
Well, I come back to my Taliesin days. I mean, it wasn't a hypothetical case. I mean, it was for me and 75 others from 35 nations, something that worked as a very cultural, artful, healthful, all these things that we talk about being green and the proper way of diet and so forth. We celebrated that. And that's what the book is about. And there are illustrations in it that deal with how that might come about. There's also, you know, the giving pledge of the billionaires giving half or more of their wealth during their lifetime. Or I'm thinking maybe some of these would like to come along with their gift, because the record is that many of these gifts have fallen short of what somebody might hope they would produce.
So with that in mind, someone picks up the book, they see the interview, they say, this sounds interesting. What do you want them to take from it?
I want them to take that there is a hope that is very important to pursue, and it's not really on anyone's agenda. It's not, you know, Dow Jones averages won't show anything about this, but that is the case with all great ideas. They start small, they gather other people, they gather their own force, and eventually it's going to be propelled by need, which is unimaginable at this point.
Well, it's very interesting. You're right about the goal being a beautiful and inspiring, purpose-centered environment. It's a very interesting book. Congratulations on the book, and thank you so much for joining us. Good conversation. Good to have you.
Thank you.
And Tuesday on Arizona Horizon, Bill Moyers joins us for a look at the current political scene. Moyers will also talk about his new documentary on New York's Rikers Island jail complex, followed by a panel discussion on correctional reform. Bill Moyers on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.